with Bryan Galloup. Bryan, always really great to have you on, although we've been speaking for some time now. But for the viewers, it's a new one. So maybe now we can talk a little bit about your own guitars, because we've heard about the vintage repros and and had a great tour of your wonderful workshop. Um, yeah, maybe you can fill us in about your own guitars and sort of your plans and how they evolve.
Sure. Well, I've as I think as everybody knows who's paid attention to anything we have going on here in Big Rapids, I started out in vintage repairs. Old vintage Martins, old vintage Gibsons, primarily specializing in flat top steel string. Of course, I had my Fender and Gibson gigs that I was doing along the way.
Yes, sir.
But during the time I spent replacing tops, or whatever I was doing, I kept specs on old vintage instruments.
Mhm.
And after you do that long enough, you're going to want to make your own guitars, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Even though I really didn't take it quite that seriously in the beginning, I was just dabbling in it. I had other things going on. Let's say like the school, for example. We could talk about that in a minute.
Mhm.
But once I had all of that under my belt and things were clicking along, I wanted to get very serious about making a Galloup guitar. And at a point, you really have to stop and ask yourself, why are you doing this? What is your goals? Or do you just want to make a guitar and put your name on it?
Mhm.
And I had already been into some Galloup builds for a while, but I had to stop and say, I need to reinvent myself. I need to stop and go back and take everything that I've learned, come up with a primary goal of what I'm trying to achieve, what is my target audience, and build those instruments. And I grew up around in the tool and die shops, and they're all about materials. And I also grew up in a restaurant. My grandfather's, they're a quality restaurant, and that's about, everything that they're using. So I went into material testing, and I knew that that was going to give me the best possible outcome for whatever guitar I decided to build and for whatever customer I was going to build it for. The other thing about that is I knew if I could nail my materials, I could deliver a guitar that for what I'm going to want to be charging for it, it's going to be a lifetime instrument, not something that's going to fail in 8 or 9 years. And you look back at the customer and say, oh, well, I don't know. And that's a lot of money to spend on a guitar. It should be lasting you and satisfy you for a long time.
Mhm.
So that was the backbone for my builds. Today, about 8 years ago, 7 years ago, I think we really hit the stride here at the shop. And I say we, don't forget that everything at my shop is a team effort. I was lucky enough to work with Sam Goodry. We worked very closely together for years. Currently, I have, Tyler Robbins and other builders in the shop that are coming on, young guys that are coming on like crazy. And we all have the same build philosophy. That is decide what your target sound is going to be. And for that, you will find your audience, or your audience will find you. Consistency. You don't want to get something going and then become a moving target for your audience. Once you come into your zone and build that thing to be the best musical instrument that you can possibly make, and then wrap all the frills around it. For me, I zoned in on my G2. It's a big body guitar. I zoned in on a cutaway. That seems to be what most people want. And I shot for a guitar that made me happy. Even though I grew up playing bluegrass and flat picking, at a point in my life, I picked up the electric guitar, Stratocaster. And the attack is so immediate, it's amplified by amplifier. When I was making my acoustic guitar, I was going for that same feel, which is really great mid-range, very quick response, a nice swell, a nice decay, but it's not a bluegrass instrument. And that really became the backbone, for what I wanted. Also, with the material testing, I went into the science end of it pretty hardcore. That was not a popular thing to be doing and talking about even 8 years ago. As the saying goes, the first person through the door kind of always gets a little more bloody, than the last guy. But the science of lutherie it's not in the future. It's here right now. Every serious builder is doing it. And it's not just good record keeping, it's analyzing your wood, make sure you're using it correctly and using quality materials. So if you buy a guitar yourself and your friend wants one just like yours, can I deliver it? Yeah, I can nail it just like that.
Right.
Along with that profile, then I can adjust that profile a little bit here, a little bit there to get different colors, different sustains, different headroom. So that gives me incredible control, which makes me happy about me. What I got tired of was building instruments, nailing 6 in a row, and then having a complete dud. What happened there? And that needed to go out the door. So consistency, was really a key issue. Once I had the G2 nailed down and I was happy, then I had a clear path to go back to my other instruments and develop their sound, which is my G6, which is a little bit smaller, and my G3, which is just a little bit smaller. The difference in those, the high end really never changes. High end is always there. High mids never really change. They're always there. They're produced through kinetic energy. It's how the low mids and lows sound. Again, they're all there. It's just that the G2 has a little more emphasis on the low end. The G6 low end gets a little tighter, and then the G3 gets a little tighter yet. So you can round out for different customers. They don't necessarily. I sent out one to a customer recently, and he was not thrilled with the mid-range. And I said, well, this is really the guitar you want that I make. And I just made it one to replace it. It was ideal for him. Which would say this is why you have different models of instruments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we heard that your favorite top wood was Italian spruce.
Italian.
Right. How about back and sides?
Well, I zoned in on Brazilian rosewood. And again, the name Brazilian or species, was it Delbergia Negra, does not make the guitar. I've had pieces of Brazilian in my hand that were terrible. On the back of the guitar is the lateral strength that you're looking for. Just not to get too scientific, but on the guitar, from front to back, if it gets out of phase with itself, that's not a good thing for reproducing tone. So what I was looking for were woods that had good lateral strength, and I bought them. But I bought a Brazilian supply years ago that was all completely legal, documented. All my wood's legal, and that's primarily what I've been out of. I have wood sets that make guitars that range from $25,000 to sets that go on $50,000 guitars. But I also love mahogany. It's just that my customers generally don't want to buy that. They want a Brazilian instrument. Also, Wingate, we talked about that. I think that's a highly overlooked wood. I have a good supply of that, but my customers primarily want my Brazilian.
Right. Do you think, okay, here's one for the books.
Yep.
Are there any particular back and side species that you find to be relatively unsuitable for guitars? I mean, stability aside, I mean, obviously, all the unstable woods out the picture, but sometimes you see a species of wood and you're just looking at it going, oh, why?
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. Let's talk about the sides for a second.
Yeah.
And on the majority of my instruments, I engineer those sides for a reason that it's laminated. Many builders don't like to say laminated, they like to say engineered because it sounds better, but they're laminated. But that's not a quality issue, and it's not a cop-out. What that does is it turns the actual outside of the guitar into a snare drum. So its actual shape is just so rigid, and it takes all responsibility off the top and the back to hold the guitar in shape. Now they can do what you want them to do. So we're really talking about the back. And one thing that I've found that on the majority of highly figured woods, they are not good backwood. They have terrible lateral strength and terrible strength in other directions. And a classic example of this is quilted maple. I have never, ever built a quilted maple guitar that I was ever satisfied with. And I've played many. When I played them, I went, this isn't exactly what I would be looking for. And I would go to that quilted maple because its figure makes it really loose lengthwise. And also its density is so low. It's like even lower than older, Other woods, there was a set I gave away to somebody just recently. I knew I never could build a guitar. I think it was Bubinga, highly figured Bubinga. I just knew that wasn't going to work for me. And this may get me in trouble, but I don't care. The tree, I have had some of the tree sets in my hand. I'm going, this would never become a Galloup guitar, So when I look at figured wood, another issue that you have to look out for in backwood is if it's too dense. And another thing that I don't like in back side material is oil. So Cocobolo is out of the picture for me. I don't like it. I don't like the way it bleeds. I don't like the way it stains purflings. It doesn't, it doesn't really want to glue together real well. And it's so heavy that you can't really tune the back the way that I like it. I like a very open, airy, responsive sound, and Cocobolo would never give that to me.
Right. So African Blackwood is out as well.
The African Blackwood, yeah, Spruciana's out. That's another one that's out the door. That's Amazon rosewood.
Amazon rosewood.
Not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen. Well, sure. Just going back a little bit to what you said about engineered sides or laminated sides, right? So one of the big questions that I always have is when you have such a rigid set of sides, right? Is it therefore it doesn't really color the tone very much?
Yeah, this is true.
Unlike the back, right? So given the fact that we know that, I dare say, peak wood is past, wood is a more precious resource. Is it more of an adherence to tradition that we're using the same wood for the sides as for the back?
Are you talking about, to make sure I get this question correct, are you talking about the ability to use mahogany for the sides or rosewood for the back? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, because to me, at least, and I'm sure I'm wrong on this, but because my simplistic view is that if you've engineered the sides to be super rigid, right, then you're laminating it, then really the outer laminate doesn't contribute that much to sound. It's more of a cosmetic kind of effect, right?
Yeah. We talked about the laminated or engineered sides and what they do. And remember, that's just a build style. It doesn't mean you have to stick with that the rest of your life, and I don't.
Absolutely.
And your perception is absolutely true. With players, with people who are serious about this, whether they're playing or building, but let's say players, they already intuitively know all this. If they've had enough guitars in their hands, they can feel that this one does this one does that. They don't need to know why. They just need to know that it's making them get to a point, that they want to get to. But there are two things at play. One is the weight of the side, and the other one is the flexibility of the side. Now, when you're talking flexibility, the flexibleness of the sides, this is like nylon string instruments. There are very small bodied nylon string, old ones that have a much deeper resonance than they should have, and the sides are really thin, and the flexibility of those sides contribute to that lower resonant frequency. And I've absolutely proven this, by testing that I've done. So solid wood sides can color and lower its overall fundamental resonance. And I think that's kind of one thing that you're referring to, right? Another thing about engineered sides is they're always heavier. If you make two guitars, one with solid sides and one with laminated sides, the laminated sides are heavier because it's the weight of the glue or the epoxy. But there's an impedance issue. This is called acoustic impedance, where if you get a side that's one weight and a top that's almost identical, the sound will transfer, it'll turn the quarter. But if you get the weight off, it'll turn it and run it back into the top. Its impedance is mismatched. So that's another way that we can kind of use those engineered sides to our advantage to develop a certain tone and be it consistent. And Sam Goodry and I have absolutely decided that was the path we wanted to go down first. Now that we have that nailed, we're going back to the solid wood sides because we have something to borrow on now to make a better decision there.
Right.
And certainly with the D18 or the reverse engineered guitars, they are solid wood instruments. I have to stay true to vintage.
For sure. Well, great. Well, thank you very much for that. You've mentioned quite a few names: Sam Goodry, Tiger Robbins, Tom Dahlia. They all came through the building program, right?
Oh yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. The school really started pretty innocently. I was sitting in my shop and someone called and said, "Can I pay you to come and hang out with you and learn how to do vintage Martin repairs, vintage Gibson repairs?" I go, "Yeah, come on in." And we did. And it was terrible. I had no business teaching. I didn't have a curriculum. I didn't know what it meant. I was 25 years old. But after I thought about it for a while, I go, I could pull this off if I set up a curriculum and had an idea and structured it so I did my regular repairs over here, but save stuff for them and do it during that time frame. It wasn't really a money issue. It was more of a pride issue. I wanted to prove to myself that I could pull this off. But in time, it went from 1 student at a time to 2 students. Then it went to 4, then it went to 8. And I was certain it was maxed out at that point until pre-COVID, we were at 27 students in a class and nicely moving down through it, And since then, though, I've been wanting to decrease the class size for quite some time. And now this is giving me the opportunity to get back down to 19 students per class, which I think is the ideal class for us. You have to remember that we have journeyman students, technician students, master's class students, and graduate students in that. So it balances them all out nicely. In the beginning, the school was primarily repairs, restorations, fret jobs, bow nuts and saddles, catered to people who knew that they were already working in a music store. If they went and got these chops down, they could make a lot more money when they went back. But slowly the school progressed into making electric guitars and making acoustics. Today, it's pretty hardcore, what we're doing. The current builds that our students, I say comfortably, they're the best in the world. The graduate class guitars are just amazing what's coming out of here. And it's just not learning. I'm not teaching, students just how to build the guitars. I'm trying to develop a luthier here. I have to remind them that the guitars aren't the project, they're the project, and the guitars are the tools that I'm using to teach them how to become a well-rounded luthier, how not to cut off their fingers, how to work safely, how to manage a shop, But today the progression of the different classes and where it takes them responsibly has been an amazing thing to watch come full circle in the last 10 years. The quality of I feel that the quality of the luthiers that this school has produced over the years kind of tells the tale of how serious we took it. It's not just Sam, it's not just Tyler, but it's Isaac, it's Megan, it's Michael Greenfield.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go down through and start listing them. And when I think about it, it's mind-boggling. But that's kind of what happened, staying here day after day, trying to make the school the very best that it can be, paying attention to not what's happening to around me, but paying attention to what's right in front of me and how can we get better? How can we improve? Is this really a good lesson? Is this what we want to be teaching our students? Where is it going to go? Are we modern? Are we up to speed? And another thing I think that is, if I could just elaborate a little bit more up front, if you're paying attention and you're at school to what's happening around you, or what, knowing the vintage stuff is cool, but if you really want to be good, you have to invent the future. You have to sit down and invent and come up with new techniques that is cutting edge, that nobody else is doing, that is going to help industry. And that has been a big plus for the students coming through our school. They go out and they really have a foothold on what's modern and what's happening right now.
Great. Sounds fabulous. I wish I was such a school when I was when I was starting out myself. Of course, I no longer do any building. Just
oh well, yeah. I wish. First off, I invite you over here anytime. You're welcome to come in. Maybe
right.
One thing to pay attention to for anybody who wants to get a taste of this is Dan Earlywine and myself still host that Northwood seminar. And that's a great way to kind of get your feet wet, go to a school like this and look around and meet other people,
Right.
But that's a great way to kind of get your hands into it. With the school, I am going to start doing some short-term classes. My school was founded on that, and I wanted to get back to it, 2-week classes, but I have to decide why I'm doing this. What has spawned me to think more about short-term training, which is 1 week and 2-week classes. It's my relationship with Taylor Guitars. Bob came out to a Northwood seminar, and I've always been taking and respected what Taylor Guitars has done over the years. And they're a quality company, and they continue today to prove and be industry leaders, not only for guitars, but, just a great company. And right now we are the only facility that's authorized to teach tailor-specific warranty repairs to our students. They still have to go to Taylor to be finished certified, but we train them, you know.
Right.
And that has gone so well that it's got me to think about short-term training again. And what will that be? For people that want to get better at finishing, you know, that's a stumbling block. And that's really a 1-week class. We can cover a lot of ground. CNC and CAD, people they have the machine and it's doing nothing more than holding down the floor in their shop. You know, they haven't been able to cross that threshold, and they come to us and we help them with that. Acoustic guitar primer, you know, where we can show them little tricks to help them in music stores and stuff. So I'm kind of excited about that for the future.
Well, that sounds great. And I guess on that note, it's getting quite late, so we'll call time on that one. So
Sure.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, Bryan. We'll look forward to catching up with you in the future and your future builds.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Take care now.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.